Thanks for joining us today for this panel presented by Folk Alliance International. My name is Tressa Levasseur, and I am the Outreach Manager at Folk Alliance. Before we dive into the proceedings, let us take a moment to acknowledge that we are joined today by folks from possibly around the globe using technology that is not accessible to all. We recognize the importance, the complexity, and the difficulty of making land acknowledgements in the context of online organizing, creating, and collaboration. And so I invite you to take a deep breath and join together in acknowledging our shared responsibility to use this time together well, to live in right relationship with the land that we are settled upon, and for each of us to acknowledge and consider our roles in reconciliation and decolonization and active allyship and accomplishment. Further, I acknowledge that I myself am joining you from the land stewarded still by the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe people on the shores of Lake Ontario in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. After I finish speaking, I will drop a little link in the chat for you in case you would like to learn more about the land that you're living upon and whose land it is.
Yes.
We hope that you will share your thoughts and observations and questions in the chat today. It's for those of you who might not know, the chat function is located on the toolbar on the lower part of your screen, as is closed captioning. That's available to you, and you can click on the CC button down there and be able to access the captions. Speaking of which, I forgot. I'm trying to remember accessibility to do a visual description of myself. So I am a woman with pretty pink skin. I'm wearing a purple and blue and hot pink t-shirt, and I'm in a room with a snazzy plant behind me. This panel will be available for viewing afterwards on the Folk Alliance YouTube channel. You're welcome to share that with your friends and colleagues and compatriots. Probably it's going to be Tuesday by the time it's up because the long weekend is coming up. Now, without any further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce our moderator and my friend, Tim Easton, to tell you more about what you can expect from today's conversation.
Hello, friends. Thank you, Tressa. Thanks to everyone for being with us today to commemorate Mental Health Month. Folk Alliance's Advocacy Committee has been hosting these webinars and peer-to-peer chats in an effort to normalize, educate, and support each other in our mental health and wellness journey. We've gathered today to discuss an important and very sensitive issue and topic. It's basically creatives and addiction. And my name is Tim Easton. I'm a songwriter and troubadour living here in the heart of the Cherokee and Chickasaw Nation. And that is Nashville, Tennessee. And today we are here to interview and talk to Harold Owens, who runs MusiCares, an organization which myself and many have benefited from in regards to mental health and therapy and recovery and stuff like that. So Harold, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, Tim, great seeing you. Welcome, everyone. I'm from calling from, from LA, and I want to acknowledge my Chumash brothers. I believe we're on their land. And so thank you for that, Teresa, for mentioning where we come from around the globe. As Tim mentioned, I'm senior director at MusiCares. I've been here 22 years. And before I got here, I want to just disclose, I'm not a professional musician, but I've worked with creatives for about 30 years. That includes artists, lots of actors. I'm in LA, so I get a lot of actors as well. But I early on in my career, I began to understand that there were significant issues around the family, and especially with musicians. We in the industry, rarely, a singer-songwriter is a different story, but you know, having to deal with a group of people when one of them is having mental health issues or addiction, we have to treat the whole family just as we would with general family dynamics in a normal population. And that family are, of course, bandmates and managers, agents, trying to bring them all on board about what happens after someone is getting better, say in addiction, if they're struggling with addiction, answering questions, what's going on the road going to mean like to them? What are we supposed to do? So those kind of things. So, you know, over the years, MusiCares, we have, again, we've been around about 30 years now, but when I came on board, we were in our infancy, and I was brought in to address addiction and mental health, and the problems that exist to not only the musicians and artists themselves, but also to the entertainment community as a whole. So that's what I've been doing, and it's been just fantastic working with artists. Couldn't ask for anything better in my life, and I am a huge. I just want to say this, Tim. It's okay. When I was about 10 years old, I got introduced to folk music early on. I was about 10 or 12 years old, and some of my heroes throughout in that period, because it was such a rich landscape back then. The Mississippi Delta blues guys, Dylan, Pete Seeger, Odette, all these folks, they opened my world in a way that I listened to the lyrics. And I also, you know, looking back now, I understand these artists came through pandemics. You know, Woody and Pete came through the Depression, and they came, and then the Civil Rights Movement. And there are a lot of similarities, because out of that, what was going on outside, you had some great, fantastic music being composed and written by these artists. And I could get a handle on their take, what was their view of America, for instance, or the world. And it's never left me. The values I learned through songwriting from, for instance, you, Tim, I mean, you know, using you as an example, of course, but back then they meant a lot. They meant so much to me. So I'm really, really honored to be here. And I want to thank you for asking me.
Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, those songwriters, the Lightning Hopkins, the Sonny Terry,
Yeah,
the
I got
struggle.
to see those guys too. We had
Right, I believe it. I believe it.
The Ash Grove, man. I saw all of them.
Right. Yeah. We take their struggles a little bit for granted today, thinking back, but they are singing about a lot of pain, and then the way they dealt with the pain. And oftentimes it was through getting down with the whiskey and stuff. So,
Yeah.
I just, if I may, I'd like to just kind of back up a little bit into the history of your life, first as a musician or artist, or your creative life at one point, and then and then leading into your own struggles with addiction. That so if we could just back up and kind of give just a little viewpoint of that.
Yeah, my career as a musician was hijacked early on. I played woodwinds, flute, and sax, and I was just attracted to the arts my whole life. And what happened was, you know, when I was around 20 years old, I guess I was going to school, and when I came back home, I, you know, crossed that line. I mean, back in my days, I grew up pretty much in the 60s, as some folks out there may recall, but it was, you know, back then it was fun. Looking back, I had a lot of fun. I took a lot of acid, pot, drank, and then it just stopped. You know, there was a point in my life where I crossed that line, and the priority for me was getting high, getting loaded, and I wanted to detach from my feelings of what I was feeling inside. And I've always had a sense of, I don't know, really anger about the world and how I saw it. And you know, one of my major resentments was the government, and I couldn't understand why people treated their fellow man so horribly. That's been a theme throughout my whole life. It's been magnified many times
And it brings
over
up
the
real
last
anger.
year. Oh yeah, yeah.
And anger,
And
I don't deal with anger very well.
I
You know?
didn't. And the way I did, Tim, was, getting the bottle and hitting the drugs. And
Yeah.
so that I didn't, it's not, you can't, that anger can't sustain itself,
Right.
So there's got to be an outlet, either a good outlet or a bad one. I chose that road that, was not good for me. And so when I was 36, I'm 69 now. I'll turn 69 in a few weeks. But
All right.
when I was 36, I had a reckoning of sorts, and I was in a motel and down off of Western and Arlington, Tim, here in LA, and I wanted to commit suicide. My best thinking said, Harold, you're a failure. You have neglected your family. They didn't know where I was at all, but I was just so isolated in my head, and my only thoughts were the relief that happened when I was getting loaded. And I remember taking a bunch of pills, and I tried to kill myself, and it just didn't work. I mean, you may have heard this before, but it was a moment of clarity for me in all the craziness that was going on in my head. That, okay, Harold, it's fuck, man, you really screwed up. And I had the sense that I would be, I should leave people alone by not looking, where's Harold, and give him some relief by taking my own life. And fortunately that didn't happen. I did get in recovery then, went to a hospital, and I just never looked back because I was so disgusted of what I had become that, I knew there were only two doors open, and I could take that path, which I'd been down many years before, for so many years, or I could try this new thing called recovery. And it was a whole new language, and it was uncomfortable, verbalizing how I felt. I didn't have the language to express the emotions inside of me anymore. And I had to relearn new words of how to communicate my inner thoughts, inner feelings with people. So that was a whole new discovery. I went back to school. I started working in a hospital as a tech, and I eventually became program director at this hospital here in LA. And then 10 years after that, I moved on to MusiCares to, kind of kick off their addiction recovery programs. So
excellent. Yeah, I mean, my long story short, or short story long, is that I was working, doing what I love to do, and then because of drugs and alcohol, I eventually wasn't able to work anymore. Like, I missed a show in a town. I wasn't able to drive, wasn't able to get to it. So I basically said, do I want to stay up all night partying and, with somebody, or do I want to play music? What do I want to do? And that led me to reach out to MusiCares several years ago. I was it was 2008 or so. And then that's when I met you, and you guys helped me get into a 30-day treatment program. And it was a 12-step program, and into recovery. But I basically did what someone with my stubborn, strong will, without guidance, without really doing it. I had kind of one foot in, right, doing it half measures, and I got zero results from that. I was dry for 5 years. I ended up entering a marriage and having a child, but then I eventually backed off from recovery work. And I just backed off, and I had no concept that, how powerless I was over all, drugs and alcohol. And I became a pot farmer, and then I got back to my main squeeze, which was alcohol.
Yeah.
And it was really quick. I'm really lucky, like nothing bad. Like, I didn't do anything. I didn't, get in any more trouble, right? Legal trouble or anything like that. But I quickly got into a mental space of like, oh, here I am again. So then
Mhm.
that's when I reached out to you again. And I'm so appreciative. And, just last night, a musician was asking me about it. And
Mhm.
I pointed him in the direction of MusiCares, as someone that's working. And so super grateful for you guys being there and on many fronts, addiction for sure. And then mental health, because it turns out, these outside issues or whatever we call them, it's all one issue. It's like we're all, I was trying to escape this thing, and was completely lost in the myth of the creative needing to be under the influence of a drug or alcohol, because my heroes who I had no comprehension about how miserable their lives were, and deaths too, so it's like
Yeah.
going back to the jazz guys,
Yeah.
founders
Same thing with me growing up, Tim. I mean, I grew up with that same, you look at a picture of someone, like Keith Richards, or, you would see that and think, wow, and so many writers that I love. And I tend to look at it now as, in spite of their addiction, they were creative. They had this genius. And I think too, and I've worked with so many artists that came to, they were under the influence, or they struggled with mental health by themselves silently, like you're talking about. And they come to a point where, maybe at the beginning that alcohol or that pot or heroin or pills gave them that boost to come out of that shell.
Yeah.
And they had those moments of like brilliance, whatever. Maybe it's true. I can kind of relate. I look at myself.
Yeah.
I remember the first time being under the influence. I got, I wanted to write, I wanted to play, I wanted to do all this stuff. But then after a while, you start, it just doesn't work anymore. And that creativity, in fact, goes down the other way. And so, I think that's why so many artists burn out early, at an early age. And it is a myth. And I've seen so many people go on to, have extraordinary lives,
Right,
and
it's
write
remarkable.
some great music,
Yeah,
So
I mean, it's remarkable to see younger and younger people. It's not that we can spare them like years of agony. You
yes,
have to kind of find your own path. But sometimes, even in the middle of your haziest minds, you heard something that did stick with you. So that's why I found my role today now is like, that's why I work with Folk Alliance and MusiCares, to just kind of be here for that occasional mind that pops out and is like, I'd like to do something about this. I can see what's going on. I can see what direction's going. It's very difficult because you certainly can't do anything unless someone kind of steps forward and asks
and
for
again,
help.
you know what, Tim, I really appreciate what you've done. I won't be in my office. I haven't been in my office for a year, but I will get calls from Tim and about a friend or someone, a friend of a friend, and Tim will call me. I said, yeah, man, just tell him to call me, because you know what, that's what somebody did for me.
Yeah.
If somebody hadn't reached out for me when I decided to make this move, and kind of because I was at wit's end, and if they hadn't done that, being alone doesn't work for mental illness or your mental health, I should say, or
Right.
addiction. It's so vitally important to talk to people,
Mhm.
and have a community of people like mine who've been through it. And in that social kind of network, whatever that network is, that's, I think, where we find recovery and wellness and
Right.
and
And
some
new family.
balance. Yeah, a new family. And I needed some different values, that people that were around me, they had life experience. And one of the themes about living life on life's terms, well,
Right.
there's ups in life and there's downs. And how do you navigate those waters
Yeah.
being sober, And I think one of the things for me, I would have gotten sober a lot earlier had I was so fearful of living life on life's terms. I didn't know what it was like. And I was more scared of that, of being sober in life, than I was of the hell, the absolute hell I was living in.
Right.
And that's absolutely crazy.
Yeah. The pain of having to make a change all of a sudden got a little bigger than the idea of, I needed to
Yes.
step forward. So that the asking for help was really, you start to feel better already for those of you that are listening and thinking about it, like, and know someone. Um, I, I know that the action of actually reaching out for help was a big deal for me. I'd love to talk about the work that MusiCares does today outside of the things that, it's been a pretty massive impact on my life and many of my friends, even right down to teeth cleaning at Folk Alliance. It's
Yeah.
like one of the last times I saw you, he's like sitting outside the dental, thing there.
That's right.
Just super cool. The things that artists need help with, creatives need help with. But I want to touch on just basically the work that you're doing. And I wasn't realized if it was international or if it was really focused on the States or what. I know that I've heard some brilliant speeches by both Bruce Springsteen and Tom Petty, like you're like doing these, at your events and stuff.
Yeah.
And so, like Bruce Springsteen said, but we all need this. It's not just musicians that are special that need the pampering or whatever. We all need this kind of help if we're in addiction. But what does MusiCares tell us a little bit more about it for those that
Well,
don't?
I tell you, I think we're the music industry. We're most vulnerable, especially during this pandemic. We have the great ability to help people for a variety of health and human services. So, like you mentioned, teeth cleaning, dental, mental health therapy, inpatient hospitalization.
Yeah.
And these things are costly.
Sometimes.
And addiction services, we have contracted rates with providers across the country. Right. They give us great rates. In Nashville, I've got, Cumberland Heights. I send somebody there once a week, for treatment. And they know, it's the circumstances, same disease, but different circumstances. And that's what I like to say to people. So while someone is getting help, they know how to address the particular needs of the music community and asking those kind of questions when they're in treatment that only a musician would be able to answer. So, that's a couple of the things we do. We're ever more expanding our services and finding ways that we need to reach out. I mean, during Katrina, I think we really came of age where we were able to mobilize a lot of money and help and get resources by money on the ground to the folks in New Orleans. And we did that on a massive scale. And it prepared us for the coming onslaught. It seems like every year there are natural disasters that happen. And then we jump to 2019 and COVID. And so we had that experience. We knew how to raise the money. We raised over $25 million from various people. Amazon gave us a ton of money, and just the friends we have helped along the way said, "Can I do a benefit for you?" So
you're in Los Angeles.
How cool is that? Yeah.
And there's an office in Nashville. And is there an
yeah.
office in New York as well? I would imagine there is.
Yes,
okay.
All three major cities we're in.
Okay, great. Just good to know for folks out there that are getting aware of MusiCares and the stories that come from it.
And we've recently, by the way, upped our website, so it's gorgeous now. We do a good job with it. It's musicares.org. And you can go on it and just plug in the different links that you need, but it's all there. So,
excellent. It's super helpful for me, and right off the bat. And it's just I know that we all have our own journey in this thing. We kind of need to. There's some lessons that had to be learned. Mm-hmm. In my case, and sometimes it's the ultimate lesson. It happens to our friends. I know that you and I both have friends that are no longer here because of drugs and alcohol and addiction problems, and they were in
and suicide, just plain mental health, depression.
And very recently for me too, like musicians I played with, that this pandemic, but the whole planet kind of went into a lull there for a minute. There was then us creatives and the people that work in the extended industry, all the touring things went into, and the booking agents and everybody went into a point of fear, like, are we going to work again? What's going to happen? And there was help was needed, and help was received, and we got through it. Not all of us did, though. There's
Yeah.
been some really heavy casualties and numbers this year, and then the reentry now is a new point of stress, which is something we're all dealing with right now too. Just kind of like, oh, now we're back up to 80 miles an hour here, and there's a new form of like, oh, I was kind of used to my pod, my
Yeah.
my stability there, and I myself am, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and I'm not so sure I want to get up and take off and be gone all that time. It's giving me a little stress. So I just want folks to know that there's someone to talk to, and there's resources out there for you. And I wanted to get into, if we could, some of the questions that have popped up.
Sure.
Let me drop one here. This is a festival question here. This is for Harold. Are there any ways you think organizations, festivals, and venues can better support harm reduction efforts for people in the industry who are still actively using substances? So that's a question for like the workers at the employees. Are there any ways you think organizations can better support harm reduction efforts for people in the industry? So that's interesting. That's okay. That question, I didn't quite look through that. Basically, that's saying, for what do we do about people that are using? I mean,
yeah, I mean, we've done, harm reduction is certainly valid, and I've got a box of naltrexone in my office that I haven't been able to take it out because I haven't been able to use it. So we do trainings. I've done 3 or 4 year before for naltrexone, how to administer it, and it was quite we've got the nasal naltrexone, and we haven't formally done that in this year, but we do trainings more than anything, and we have such available quantities of it that any touring company or production company that wants to get a hold of it, it's so easy now. So I think it's important to have it on hand. And on tours and festivals, I'm hoping at the first aid tent, there's naltrexone on board as well. I mean, we usually have an area. Tim will know this. Say, for instance, at South by, we'll have what's called a safe harbor room, and they'll give us one of the conference area rooms, and we'll do a 12-step meeting or support meeting, whatever. For an hour and a half, 2 hours. And we've done that for years at there and other festivals as well. So.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for that. Because like the very nature of a festival is like, let's face it, it's festive. It's about a party. And so for those that want to still do that and feel safe and
have fun.
Yeah. And have fun. It's good to know that there actually is a resource there for you if you feel like you've crossed a line or something. How, this is another question that came in. How do you know when your consumption is becoming a problem? Am I kidding myself? For me, it was just legal, and just, there was a mental thing going on too, but I started to get in legal trouble, in different places around the world. And it started to add it up, and I couldn't deny it anymore. That was, for me, what happened. A lot of people, it's not legal. It's not homelessness. It's a mental thing. So to spare you any of that, what I had to go through, it's it's just asking the questions. I don't know if Harold wants to touch on that. It's like, how do you know?
No, I think I think for me I was suffering so many negative consequences that the positive results of my drinking and using, they didn't work anymore, and then the negatives began to pile up exponentially.
Yeah.
So it's to what degree of unmanageability, it's a good word, it makes in your life. And if you can sit down and, use that part of the brain that's rational and truthful, because I used a lot of the other part of the brain. It says, we can, it's not going to hurt us. We're okay.
Yeah.
Yet I was living in my car. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Apparently that consequence wasn't enough.
Yeah, exactly. And it's an inside job too. It's that part of you that wants to survive and live. It's instinctual, and having people around you that maybe have been through it and can kind of guide you to this path. And I think for me, there are many paths to recovery. It doesn't necessarily have to be 12-step, but again, I think it's being around like-minded people who are searching for the peace and wellness and balance in your life that comes with sobriety. It's a spiritual, I got to tell you, it's a spiritual journey. And I don't mean that to be religious, but it is a spiritual journey. So,
yeah. And there was some shame there that I piled on top of drinking, on top of that. You just like, let's just not deal with shame or about things. And I was drinking on top of that. So
yes,
I just kept going farther and farther from it when I found out like maybe drinking and drugs weren't my problem, but yet I had something else. I had a problem inside here that there's something else going on. That's drugs and alcohol are something I personally used to squash it down. And we can say that about gambling, sex, food. The list is quite long. And so I basically, I knew it became a problem. It was up here. And for me personally, legally as well, the consequences, and the idea of having to change and face all that, the pain of thinking about doing that outgrew where I was, what I was dealing with, like the police coming on each side. So that's my personal story. So the pandemic, how has the pandemic affected you? We touched on this a little bit. I just want to say,
that's a good question. That's a great question.
It's been quite a year.
Always needs to come up. And I think there's been I have a few groups. I go to a support group probably 5 times a week at night usually. And with other artists that, and they share about, in the beginning, the pandemic, it was great. After a while, a lot of my friends began to realize being home was not so bad. Being home and watching your kids grow is not so bad. Fairly screwed up what happened, but there were some silver linings to this deal. And I had a lot of friends who, including myself, who travel a lot, thought, oh no, man, I love to travel. Come on, what am I going to do? And after a while, you don't miss it. I found myself not missing getting in those airports anymore. And now, as we were talking earlier, Tim, the anxiety about hitting that road and getting back on that train again is coming up, and people are starting to think about that. So,
it's the full question was how the pandemic affected you, your work, and your sobriety. And I agree with everything Harold said there, and just that work-wise, though, I was like, I got into some acceptance about this pandemic thing. I'm lucky I had a roof over my head and a child, and I quickly got in my recovery world. I just dove in. I started joining the support groups. I started going every day. I used Zoom. I used the technology. I was like, it's here. What's the alternative that it's not here and we're alone, So I was like, okay, I'll just lean into it and I'll start working with others, basically. So I kind of got further deep in the middle of the boat of recovery because of it. And now this period of time when we're coming out of it, apparently right now, has caused a little bit of turbulence. And but luckily there's an answer for that too. And that is just to, I do like an inventory, like what exactly is it that I'm afraid of? That's one of my useful things. Like actually write it down. Like what are you afraid of? And it's not always easy, but it helps me kind of take a good look at what's going on underneath the lack of peace of mind or whatever.
I agree, Tim. I've taken a deeper dive myself into my recovery and other things, and this pandemic has given me the time to do more reading and things I like to do and prioritize. Very important.
The house is a little less messy. It's got those. My archives are super tidy up there. We have the MusiCares website and stuff like that is in the chat room there for those who want to check that out. I wanted to go down here to the specific question about Okay, well, oh, I don't see that question down there. Let me just open up this one window.
Mhm.
The the notion that um, when you think that you've gone too far with something, and you don't want to reach out for help, and you're not able to do it, and you're basically stuck in this kind of a single-minded way, and you don't see any help. What I guess what I'm trying to say is like what do you think now? Let's back up to the musicians that you've seen, and the creatives basically, and people in the
Mhm.
business, actors, and all that. Um, have you seen them flourish? And I don't know. It's hard to ask because you can't give examples, but if it's more like um, what's like the ratio with the amount of people that are coming in that are asking for help that are
Staying clean or
yeah
getting
I
better. Yeah.
it's
Well, I
tough.
think
I went from two things. I
yeah,
crossed
that's okay.
genres there,
No,
but
I heard a couple questions. That's
yeah.
good. I think I can give you an example. In the early '90s, I was working with a manager, and they were getting ready to go back on tour, and they had one member who was, damn near comatose because of drinking and blow and everything else. And the management gave that artist enough time to really devote, a month or two to getting clean and being around. Well, we also put support groups in place around this camp, and
Hmm.
still doing superb, better now than he was before. And I've seen that countless times. I think one of the reasons is there's more and more people, as more and more people get jumped into, recovery and getting clean, or support for mental health, the better those outcomes are
Okay.
long term. And I've seen it with I've seen it with airline pilots. I used to work with docs. It was the same way, and attorneys, because they were mandated to stay in recovery for a certain amount of time before they would get their licenses back. But those are sanctions, but they work because after a while they were happy to keep on in their recovery.
Okay. Yeah. The I wanted to return to there's I guess the two-part question on the harm reduction stuff here, and it's come back into the fold here. Safer equals literally safer health wise, or a feeling of safety in knowing they will not automatically be fired, criticized for substance use if others find out. Well, this is addressing. I think this panel, or what we're discussing here, is creatives and and recovery and sobriety, and creatives and addiction. Sorry, and
Mhm.
in the notion of like what's going on at festivals and making people feel safer about their drug use or alcohol use or whatever. I think that's more of a question for festival organizers, because I think like the very nature of a festival is that people are throwing down, and sometimes the people that work at festivals are of course are partaking in this, and it just says, yeah, it says, I know the main, this is not the mainstream thought process surrounding substance use, i.e., what do we do about making people who use substances feel safer and literally be safer? Uh, um,
Well, yeah, I don't know if I'm tackling her. So let me take a stab at that, Tim.
yeah,
I think maybe what they're asking is, we're not out to proclaim abstinence
yeah,
I don't have an opinion on what people do. I'm only here, and you, Tim, when people do get in trouble with it. And
mm,
really, I have no issue, or I don't know what that's what they meant by harm reduction, but what people do and legalization. I don't care about that stuff.
yeah,
I just care
yeah,
about
yeah.
who,
Happiness,
who, there's a certain percentage of the population, be it genetics or whatever, or upbringing or childhood trauma, that are susceptible to addiction. And
right?
addiction is a lot different from partying or even
Yeah,
heavy use or moderation. Addiction is
right.
a totally separate beast.
Yes.
And I've seen so many people who are, I would call heavy drinkers or users, given the right reasons, they stop. You know, given the fact
Yeah.
they have a kid, they stop or
Yeah,
get
definitely.
married. You know,
Yeah, tip of the hat to them for sure, because it's like I'm here. Like the conversation I had last night is a great example of it. You know, we were
hmm
out, social friends were playing music. It was a wonderful gathering, and someone just kind of came over and started talking to me about stuff, and I just kind of told him what I did and what I was doing, and talked about
yeah,
MusiCares. And it's like, yeah, I can't go around like, you know, I feel lucky today. I'm not like obsessed with drugs and alcohol where I'm like counting other people's drinks or worried about what they're doing. It's like my main
yeah,
concern really is your happiness. It's like, are you happy? You
yeah.
know, I mean, if you're not hurting, you know, of course, putting someone in danger, putting yourself or your family in danger is not proper. But today, yeah, I guess I don't have a whole lot of bandwidth to, you know, I don't, if someone feels guilty about or in trouble about their drug use or alcohol use or whatever they're going through, then I hope to be there if they ask me, you know, what's going on with it in your life. That's basically um,
hmm
my. I feel like part of my role or part of my purpose today is not to lecture or look at
yeah,
people and judge them. The judging is like shrinking back, as a matter of fact, because I see myself not in just music and creative artists that are struggling, but other people that are just struggling in general. I mean, there's a lot of struggle out there, and
hmm
there's a lot of people that are living, you know, a happy, relatively peace of mind life. And I'm glad that when the peace of mind went away so much for me that I was able to do something about it. And so yeah, I can't.
yeah. And again,
Tough
it's
question.
attraction rather than promotion. You know, we
Right.
don't promote this deal we have, but you know, if you maybe if I've heard of Tim Easton and he's clean, maybe it's a guy I can talk to. Well, that's attraction, and that makes you safe.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would have got clean if somebody lectured me or you know went at me that
No.
way. I would have just you know totally rebelled.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I have some heroes that have passed on, and
hmm
some heroes that are, you know, still with us, and then I have some heroes that are, you know, that are in recovery,
Yeah.
artistic heroes, and it's been a really powerful thing to kind of bond with them over this. And let me see. I think a question has come in here. I have a question. What can a person do for a loved one or bandmate who are really struggling and don't reach out for professional or organizational help? Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, I run across that all the time, and I would say this: I think it's very difficult for friends and family members to talk to somebody in trouble.
hmm.
I even in my own, I've been in workspaces where it's happened. I
the
think if my sister
intervention per se,
pardon,
the intervention
yes,
scenario.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's difficult for families to have that conversation because sometimes it comes off you know, as accusing them of something, and it may come off wrong sometimes.
Mhm.
But I think if I just tell people in my own practice what I say to someone who was calling, I would say, "Will you? Why don't you do this? Why don't you ask them? Tell them you got a friend named Tim who's been through it. Is it okay if he calls you or you call him?"
Right.
And open it up that way, and then let us. I mean, we have a language, us who have been through it,
Mhm.
that is they understand where we're coming from, and sometimes that therapeutic value of having somebody who's been there is so important
Mhm.
because you know after a while you tell if I told my story to someone who's having trouble and 5 minutes later, man, you got a person that's listening. Very rarely will people just shut me off and say, no, get out of here. But you know, if you have someone that's struggling, they'll know the truth when they hear it, and they will have
Yeah.
an opinion.
Yeah, I can step forward and say right away for that person that sent that I'll take that phone call anytime, just because
Mhm.
to make the phone call was very difficult for me. You know, it was
Yeah,
just, I don't want to talk to some stranger, someone I don't know about something. And then I heard some familiar things. I heard some experience and some hope behind it, you know. And I
Yeah.
just I didn't have that at that time. So you never know when you're gonna like that's gonna pop open for you. And we you know we're here for you, and it's kind of nice just to gather with you and talk about this in a way that is very trying to be simple and straightforward about it. I still got a little bit of the, you know, the ADDs kicking in sometimes, and I'm trying to fly around, you know, questions and stuff. But I really admire the work you do and the work MusiCares does. And if you know anybody out there is listening to this or sees this and knows someone specifically in the music industry or entertainment industry that is struggling, and really doesn't know where to go. It's a really simple, you know, go on that musicares.org site, and you can immediately begin to make, you know, questions or reach out and contact, and you can find me quite easily as well on the internet. Not hard to find me. I'm kind of excited to continue working both in recovery and as a creative. Like I
Yeah.
haven't set that side apart, that part of my life. If anything, being in recovery has made it stronger somehow. Like I thought before, like I needed the, you know, psychedelics or whatever it was to find some other spiritual thing, right? That spiritual path. Turned out that had a little bit of a dead end to it. Had a ceiling that it just that sent me back into self, but not necessarily selfishness, but more like what's really going inside the spirit here of the and what is your connection to other human beings? We like to, and a lot of people have heard this, that the opposite um, connection is the opposite of addiction, right? You're just kind of isolating, moving off into thinking that you know what's best for you, and sometimes you need a little
It's
nudge.
lonely, you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'll say this. It's a lot of work being a drug addict or alcoholic. It's just a lot of work. It's
it is.
much easier navigating life without having those constant obsessions and thoughts, and they guide your life, you know.
Yeah,
They really
loneliness,
do.
isolation. Now today, I look, I use my time kind of wisely. Like there's 24 hours in the day. That's a load, the load of time. That's like 8 hours of work, 8 hours of sleep, roughly.
Mhm.
That leaves 8 hours for play, you know,
Yeah.
and the idle hands. So it's like it leaves a lot of time to actually. I invest a little bit of time in recovery every day, whether that's talking to someone else or doing something like this or some kind of basically getting together with friends. And that is turned out for me, it's like opened up more time for creativity. I don't know how else to explain it, but the channels kind of open up for me as before there was a clog in there because I thought I had to do something in order to get somewhere, or I couldn't do this before I left the house, or whatever it was for me at that time. So let me see. Let me just check. We're about to wrap it up here. I want to kind of make sure that we've checked all these questions in the chat thing. Thanks to everybody that's participating. If you want to throw a question in there, I encourage you very much. Our guest Harold Owens here from MusiCares. Super honored that you came by for a
Well,
little chat today, man.
hey Tim, let me just close with this because you saw me go through this. I in 2008, I had some medical crises come my way, and I went to my doctor. My labs weren't good. It turns out that I had chronic kidney disease, and almost right away, I was on a dialysis machine. You know, I'd have to go 3 times a week. I was traveling, you know, around the country at the time, and I'd have to check in these dialysis center and get dialyzed. I'd wake up at 4 a.m. It was horrible, right? Almost died twice. But anyway, as a result of some good friends, they raised their hand to become tested for a kidney donor, and I got a kidney, man. And I want to tell you, that if I had known that when I was newly sober or was still out there, that I would suffer this kind of, you know, life-threatening crisis, I would say, well, what the F, you know, I might as well stay drunk. This is what's going to happen. I got to tell you, man, in spite of all that trouble that I went through, it was hell, right? But in spite of all that, I was so grateful. I was so grateful for my time on the planet as a sober human being. I don't think I'd ever felt like a human being before, ever in my life. I was whole, faults, strengths, assets, deficits. I just felt this sense of gratitude that really sustained me. And, if that's not one plug for sobriety, and I owe that all to, I owe it all to getting clean. I don't know what
so
is.
much, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, super powerful. I'm merely dealing with like basal cell skin cancer. Like it runs in my family.
Yeah.
But I apply these principles of like, what's happening right this minute. It's like you're okay, and it's hard to not get into fear about many things, like the future of our careers, our lives, whatever. And then when actual existentialism, like I could be gone,
Mm-hmm.
presented, and you still feel grateful for the time that you have. It's a very rich feeling, and I come from a really big family, and that had also part to do with me entering recovery. And like half, I have members of my family that are in
Mm-hmm.
recovery now, and some that are not, and we all support each other today. And it's nice. This Folk Alliance family, massive and beautiful. Super grateful for it. MusiCares is the same way. It's just it's kind of it's that we're there for you. So I do want to. Another question just came in, and it's a bit of an observation and a question rolled into one.
Mm-hmm.
And we got about 5 minutes left, so we'll just kind of let's check this out. It says, certainly it is not my intention to be judgmental in any way. I know that substance addiction is a symptom of a deeper personal self-concept issues. I find that it's unintentional, but when going through personal suffering, many of us can appear to others as selfish and inner focused with concerns about how to maintain sobriety, etc. Interesting. I once heard the teaching that mastery of self can be realized by forgetting the self. This is touching on Buddhism, I believe, right? I once heard the teaching that mastery of self can be realized by forgetting the self. In other words, living in service to others as much as possible. How can people with addictions get over themselves, so to speak, and put their focus less on their own suffering and more on serving the real challenges and needs of others?
That's the whole
Short answer,
enchilada
the
right there.
telephone.
Listen, that's a great one, because that's the whole thing, is not being that person, not just thinking of yourself and acting out of ego. I so believe that it's for me, it's one addict talking to another, and in that we both get help. And it's a totally valid question, and I think that it embarks on another. There's many paths to this, what we're talking about here, and it's not, it can be AA, it can be Buddhism. There's a whole push with kind of an amalgam of Buddhist philosophy and AA, and there are many roads down this path. So
Yeah.
I think you find the one that works for you, and that balance is personal, and it's how you best overcome what you set out to do. So good question.
Yeah, and we can all struggle, and we also all probably know someone else who's struggling. And that is my short answer, is to pick up the telephone, not just text somebody, but actually ask them how they're doing and mean it. That's basically, it gets right down to a communication, a contact with others. And because, I was very selfish. Well, I don't know, a self-centered, artist. When I entered this thing, when I started doing my thing and hitting the town, hitting the road, it was like, screw you, where's mine? I want, trying to, trying to organize the show. Like, I need you to do this. I need you. There was no like, I'm going to get to know the monitor man right now and talk to him. I'm going to ask him how he's doing. So that's been the change for me, is turned around and like employ some of this empathy that you actually, is inside you, and you kind of stifled it with all this self-centered behavior. So that, again, is my personal journey, and really happy to be here to talk to you about your journey and how you ended up at MusiCares and what MusiCares does. Again, all friends of Folk Alliance out there, if you're listening, we're going to wrap up really soon, but MusiCares.org is how you find out more about that. And of course, we want to thank Folk Alliance and Tressa and everybody that helped us put this this panel together today. Thank you, Harold, for coming by.
Thank you, Tim.
To say hello. I think there's still a few minutes left. Tressa, would you like to wrap this up for us today?
I absolutely will. And I really do want to say thank you to both Harold and Tim. I know if we were all in a room together, we'd be clapping. So we'll just all clap at home by ourselves. Clap, 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 clap. Thank you also to Bonnie for her captioning work on this conversation. We appreciate you, Bonnie, and everything that you do. This session and the accompanying transcript will be available as a recording on the Folk Alliance YouTube channel, as mentioned. If you would like to visit the Folk Alliance website to find out the resources that we have, you can see them. There's a slide there, and there's a link in the chat for that. As well, if you would like to support our work, which includes providing these webinars for free, not only to you, beloved members of our community, but also the entire world, please consider becoming a member of Folk Alliance if you're not already. You can do so by visiting www.folk.org/join. And we would like to thank you for your attendance and your kind listening. Let's all stay kind and connected. And we will see you all next time, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you to Harold and Tim. And goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks.